Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Where the Road Rises, Law, Lessons, Legacy, where we light and guide viewers caring for aging parents, ailing spouses, and their frazzled selves. With me, your host, Eileen Carolyn Walsh, and guests, we tackle the legal, financial, and emotional challenges our brave caregivers face. And always we tell our stories, ease our burden, connect and learn through shared heartache, triumph, and hard-earned wisdom. I have known the professional face of our guest today for many years. Glen Kato sits with me on the board of the Oakland Chamber of Commerce. I have witnessed him give endless time and talent to the Chamber, as well as the Library Board, Library Foundation, and his beloved Rotary Club. He has fought to get laws passed that align with his keen sense of social justice. However, it is the personal life of Glen Kato we will mind today. In addition to his professional service, that guy we see on the outside, Glen nursed his father through his last illness and still cares for his aging mother. Glen will share his lessons, including the importance of having a plan, the poignancy of deathbed conversations, and those timeless values, love of family, love of life, and love of our common humanity. Welcome, Glen.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show. How about if we start with a little background? How did you grow up? What were your parents like? How was your relationship with them?
Well, I grew up in Oakland, and my parents were pretty solid middle-class parents. My dad was probably one of the hardest working people I've ever known. He was a trained engineer, fought in Korea, went home, spent almost 12 years getting a degree, and then took care of his mother for 13 years, who had a stroke. So I grew up seeing that environment. My mom, another very great, hardworking person. She was a stay-at-home mom, and then got her associate's degree when she was 50 years old, and went and became a teacher's aide.
Good for her.
So, good relationship, solid people. I mean, not perfect, but not horrible. Just good, solid people.
Yeah. And how did you find yourself as an adult in the caregiving role, Glen?
Well, I'm the youngest of four, and the oldest two moved out, pursuing careers, in different states. As the youngest, I kind of spent more time at home as they aged. My dad was 40 years old when I was born, so a good age gap. And I came around and I noticed that he had a quadruple bypass surgery just before he turned 65 years old. And at that point I realized, well, I probably should kind of keep an eye out for him. Being the hard working person that he is, he would go out and build something, even though he had heart surgery. So I had the encouragement of my mom. I would come around as often as I could and just kind of say, oh, do you need some help? And kind of respect his space, but just make sure that they were okay. And they really were fine for a good 15 years after this quadruple bypass. My mom had also been sick on and off. And what I found is, as they got older, they would slow down a little bit. My dad liked to drive to Tennessee to visit my oldest brother. And I kind of found, well, maybe it wasn't a good idea for him to drive 9 hours.
Yes.
So I would find time out of my schedule, and I would drive both of them down there and spend time, and then drive them back, just to make sure that he didn't, get overly tired on the road. And so that's how it started. And as parents age, it can be a slow process, and you just notice they're not as sharp as they used to be. And and just keep an eye on them.
Yeah,
So,
and driving is one of the things we look
Yes.
for, isn't it?
yes.
Are there any other signs for our viewers to look for that maybe it's time mom and dad started getting a little help?
Well, there are the signs with my mom more than my dad. Now that my dad's passed away, you'll look in the refrigerator and you'll find food that's really expired and amazingly expired, and that's not how she used to be. She was really on top of everything, and you just think, okay, that's a little strange, or things maybe aren't as clean as they used to be. Her vision had started to deteriorate, and so you would just notice strange things. There were spots in places that she would usually clean. Well, that's because she couldn't see the spots. And then as her vision got bad, there was risk of fall, which you don't think about. So you want to try to get the house in a way where there aren't objects that we would all see as you walk, but maybe she wouldn't see them. So moving throw rugs, signs like that. Driving, getting lost, getting confused when you're driving, or getting confused in conversations. And they're subtle, and you don't want to, everybody is forgetful. And as you age, it doesn't necessarily mean you're terminal, but you just cue in and you try to be very respectful. And not be overly alarming, but maybe step in very casually and try to make sure they're okay.
Because they are maybe hiding the signs.
Very much so. When my dad, he got sick and passed away a little over 4 years ago. He was a tough man. I mean, he was a taskmaster. He could build and design anything. And I still am amazed. He had an engineering background. He grew up, was born during the Depression, grew up during World War II, had to do everything for himself. He grew up in absolute poverty. If it needed to be fixed, he would fix it. He talked about grabbing a bicycle out of the trash and finding a tire, and this was during World War II when rubber wasn't available, and somehow making this broken tire and bike work, and he became a messenger, and just amazing things. So he was a tough man, and he would never tell you ever if he was in pain or if anything was wrong. And when he finally did get sick, he got sick very rapidly. It was really, it was stunning to realize how much I didn't know about his health. I didn't realize he had a heart murmur. He had had one since he was born, and that made sense why he took some of his medication. So, so you have to, it's a delicate balance. You have to try to let your parents know, okay, I need to know more. If you're getting older, and it's a delicate. Nobody likes to get older, and no one likes to lose their independence. So, you want to try to really be honest with them. Okay, what is your plan? What are your wishes?
Glen, tell me how, when you first started stepping in, you navigated your siblings, because there's also a delicate balance, isn't there?
Siblings, I'm the youngest of four, and I would say all four siblings, we are completely different from each other. I would always laugh and say, how on earth did we come from the same family? And everybody has their own idea on health. They have their own idea on medicine. And that's where the conversation with your parents becomes important. What do the parents want?
Yes.
Because I know what I want. My sister may want something slightly different. My older brother may want something different. Their expectations are pretty far-flung. So the discussion, we had started this discussion when my dad had his quadruple bypass and when my mom got sick. That was 15 years earlier. And they had decided to do a living will. So we had that discussion, and I actually did a living will, which was a very strange thing to do. I was in my late 20s at the time. I'm like, okay, this is a strange question. But it's important, and he went over, he was a very meticulous person, thank God. Everything had a folder, so I knew, all right, if something happened to him, I knew I could go in the basement, I can pull the drawer out. Okay, how old is the roof? What happens if the water heater goes off? Where's these crazy life insurance policies? Everything was in order, and we had discussions really every time they went away on a trip. He would say, all right, I want you to know, here's where everything is. Here's where the water turn-off valve is in the house if pipes break. A true engineer. So we had those discussions, but as really a year before he passed away, I really noticed him slowing down. And it was a slow process, but he grew up during the Depression, so his idea of money, where to put money, was very different than, let's say, baby boomers or after that. When he retired, he put everything in CDs and banks. And for a good 10 years, I like to say, tormented all the bankers within the 10-mile radius, had a little bit of money in every bank. And he would meticulously look at the rates, and he would switch them as they matured. And it actually worked for him. I know financial planners would lose their mind over that idea, but
they call it lazy money.
Right. And well, as he was really slowing down, and I noticed he was forgetting things, I started to worry. How am I, if you pass away? And my mom was very different than my dad. My mom was very laid back. She did not run anything in the household in terms of finances. She had no idea how any of this stuff worked. And I thought, okay, I'm the primary. I'm the one who's living. I actually, towards the end, I had moved back home. So I was in the household with them. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have any idea who these bankers are and what to do. So I, over a 6-month period, convinced him to talk to a financial planner and to try to consolidate some of these things and put them on a current list so I knew where things were. And we got 90% through this process when he got sick.
That is incredible.
And we put the house in a trust, and it had not been a trust. And these were discussions that were very hard to have with him. He was, no, I don't need a trust. No, what do I need? I don't want to do this. And the conversation was, well, Mom isn't good at this stuff, and I'm probably not anywhere near as good as you are. What is going to happen? You want to take care of Mom. Let's make this as easy as possible so that we know where things are, we know how to handle them. And he did agree. And at that time, being in insurance, I had started to do a lot of networking, so I knew people in the industry who I trusted. And I brought them in, and he interrogated them, and they survived, and I would warn people as they would come in, he's a good person, he's going to ask you lots of hard questions, do not take it personal. And we did get the house in a trust. So we were 90% there when he got sick. And he got sick over Christmas, and he passed away in April. And it was incredibly fast.
Let me say, just at this juncture, that is what we talk to you viewers about all the time. Getting the legal documents in place, a living will, end-of-life instructions, so the family have the hard conversations, so that the family know what you want and can give you what you want, and then you take that difficult decision out of their hands. The legal documents, the trust, the financial documents, luckily you had the time during that precious period that you were able to care for him to get a lot of that done. And I'm sure after he did pass, that really paid dividends for you and your mom.
It did, because when somebody's sick, you don't have time to think about all these details. They're sick, you're running. He was in and out of the hospital. He was in hospice. It was incredibly stressful. So you're trying to do your job, you're trying to take your responsibility with your parent, and also manage the medical system, which could be a whole discussion in and of itself. There's there's a dozen doctors who are now taking care of your father because he's in the hospital. They all have different opinions. You have to manage the medicine. You have to manage. So that's stressful. Well, then you need to figure out, well, what are the day-to-day things? What bills need to be paid? Is there a life insurance policy? So it helped.
Yeah, so you, at the same time as managing your own life and all the management of the illness, the doctors, the insurance, the home, knew that you were spending your last few months with your father.
Yeah, so the fact that these things were together, it allowed me to focus on him, and I spent many hours sitting in the hospital with him talking, and it was precious. and we had discussions that I had never heard before. Things, here's this parent. Well, now I'm seeing him as a human, and he's telling stories about his childhood that just blew me away. Things I had never known, and I walked away with a lot of respect and maybe some sadness, because he had a very hard life, and it was precious. So.
And you understood him in a way that you had
I understood him
never
as a
done
human
before.
being, we're not none of us are perfect, and I understood a lot of why he did the things that he did, and it was amazing. And he was a very good person, and he to the last breath he had instructions for all of us. He pulled me in. He had instructions: take care of your mother. Instructions for my sister. So it was powerful.
And how did you deal with the role reversal, Glen? Because you were the boy, he was your father, that strong, authoritative figure, and now you were taking care of him.
It's a strange thing, and I think it's strange for both. Although I think he was comforted that his family was there, but it's a strange role because it's an adult. It's somebody who's had a whole life experience, and this is a loss of. I mean, they're not only dying, but they're losing their independence. They're losing their identity. It takes a lot of listening and a lot of. You really have to just take a breath, and they can lash out. And some of it is the illness, and you have to understand what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. That none of this is personal. Somebody is sick. They don't feel good. They may not even be aware. And you just have to be very compassionate.
And is that the advice, Glen, that you would give to those in the caregiving role?
Yes.
How do they overcome the obstacles to enjoy the fleeting, precious time and get the most out of it?
Well, I think hopefully have the conversations before you're in hospice, and really encourage, have things designated, have things planned out as much as you can. One thing I want to mention, it wasn't so much with my father, but with a friend. Both of her parents were sick, and she discovered that their life insurance policy had not been paid for a year and had lapsed. This was a policy that they had had for decades, and she didn't know because she never had the conversation with them. Are there any bills I need to be paying attention to? So that was a big deal because her father passed away, and then she had her mother to take care of. This life insurance policy would have really helped her.
Yes.
Had she been aware as they're slipping, are bills being paid? Maybe instead of paying them monthly, you try to encourage a parent, can we put it on automatic deductions?
Oh, yes.
And that's a huge, you don't have to worry. Is it paid? I know it's paid because it's on automatic deduction. I'll just go every so often, check the checking account, and make sure things are okay.
And now you're still taking care of your mother. How old is your mother, Glen?
She's 81.
Good gracious. And is she in good health?
No. She struggled. She has a whole host of health issues. Great spirit. She had a stroke a year ago. And it was a strange stroke. It was not textbook at all. We were watching television, and she made some comments on how things looked funny on the television, and like, well, what do you mean? I can't see. She couldn't see certain people, and I'm like, okay, but she had vision issues, so I thought, well, maybe her eyes are getting bad. I went through the rundown, count to 10. She counted to 10. What's your name? No problem. She never lost the ability to talk, and my gut instinct was to take her to the hospital. She did not want to go. We waited till the next day, and she was still disoriented, and then I put my foot down and said, we're going, and she had a stroke, and it was a major stroke, but it had hit in a way that it impacted vision more than speech.
Okay.
So after that, she had to have surgery. She had blockage in her arteries. That was a step. Recovery from the surgery, recovering from the stroke, could not drive anymore, and then that triggered other issues. So she didn't have energy. She would just sit on the couch or lay and sleep for hours, and that's where you jump in and you have to know, well, who's her doctor? You learn the medicine, what is the medicine? She could not and still cannot manage her medicine. So once a week I get out the big pill box and I actually have a sheet and I go one by one, all right, these are your pills, and I figured out that I have to make sure she takes them. And not only that she's forgetting to take them, but her vision is bad. Sometimes there's one little pill that she doesn't see in there. And so you just have to keep very gently managing, and that's where removing obstacles, crazy little things like a dryer sheet might fall on the floor. Well, if she can't see the dryer sheet, she might slip on that. Encouraging her not to go in the basement when I'm not there, getting a medical alert, and just being, being compassionate, but at the same time letting them know, I just want to make sure you're okay. Now, one thing we did do, before her stroke, my father passed away, and they had been married for 50 plus years. Yeah. They were yin and yang. They were the most opposite people I've ever met who fit together somehow and made it work. She was really lost. Her identity, she lost her identity. And so we got a dog. And that was not only amazing for her, but it was amazing for me. I had never had a dog, and she had a pet when she was a child, but not as an adult. And that was a great moment for both of us. It kind of brought us together. It gave her a lot of joy. And so that was a powerful thing to keep her spirits up, and it still does.
I love that, Glen. We talk a lot on the show about the value of pets, the companionship, the love, and what they offer for our seniors. But you find too, you got the dog for your mom.
I did.
There was a connection, and you love it also.
I really do. I now walk every day with this dog, so my health is probably better than it's ever been. I just walked this morning, and it was freezing cold outside, and she's a little dog, but she loves outside, so I've got 10 coats on and a hat, and this little fuzzy thing is just sniffing everything, and I'm, come on, let's go. But,
so who rescued who?
I think the dog rescued me as much as my mother. And so these are powerful things, and I know they bring pets into the hospitals, and there is really something to that, because it's just a connection. It's something to touch, and they're warm, and for her at home, I don't work far from home, and I constantly check on her, but she has this wonderful little creature there that sits by her side all day long, and it barks when people are at the door, so she feels safe. And it's just something for her to do. It's instead of just sitting there watching television or sleeping all day, she now has a dog that demands, hey, get up and play with me. And so she throws the toy for sometimes 40 minutes, because it's a pretty demanding little thing, but it's good for her.
Absolutely great. Now, do you have resources, Glen, if it gets too much, if you need some respite?
Yes, I do, and I was lucky in that I got connected through my marketing before they got sick. I knew people who were in the caregiving business, and there's wonderful resources. There's Plows, which is a local organization. Now, a lot of that luckily my dad had saved every penny he ever made, so we're not wealthy, but we're in a position where we're okay, and we don't need a lot of these resources from a financial standpoint, but there are resources. There are a number of church groups she goes to, maybe every other week. They have she has friends who will take her there, or I will take her there, and they have a lunch, so she gets social opportunities. So there are a lot of resources, and they help you remind yourself you need to take care of yourself. You need to have a moment for yourself to get out and take a breather, because you sometimes go into this role and you want to keep being the super, child, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you want to just keep going and taking care of them, and you burn out. And if you burn out, you're not going to be any good to anybody else.
Perfect. So. Absolutely. The caregiver is often the last to be acknowledged or to get some help, and we need them strong and healthy.
And you may not even realize what you're feeling. And I know when my dad passed away, I crashed for a good month. Because when a person is sick, you're so hyped up and you're so focused on, okay, you're going to get better and we're going to see the doctors and we're going to take you here. And then when all is done, you just don't realize how tired you were or how poorly you ate.
And your grief.
And your grief. And grief is another really amazing thing. The caregivers that came were amazing. And towards the end, it was a week. He actually came home and he passed away in the house. And so there was a caregiver there 24 hours for the last week, and they were just amazing. And they gave me this book that just talked about, and it was a thin little pamphlet. It talked about the stages of death. And it was probably the best thing that I ever read because it helped me understand what I had experienced when he was getting sick. He was sick and he kind of shut off the world, and we kept thinking, no, we just need to cheer him up. Well, no, he was dying. Yeah. And just understanding the different stages and what you're witnessing. Strange things like thrashing towards the end of when somebody's dying, they do a lot of thrashing, and you don't understand what am I looking at. And this pamphlet just explained it. So after I read that, I understood, okay, a lot of what I saw or was not personal. It wasn't him. It was a person sick or passing away.
That's an incredible insight. And we've talked to a lot, because our show focuses on caregiver, we've talked about the subject a lot. And I've never heard anyone articulate that if you understand those stages, it's your loved one.
Yes.
It's very hard to care for them anyway with the role reversal.
Yes.
And they're going through biological changes that you
Yes.
might interpret as personal or personality.
Right, and there's
when in
something
fact
very
it's-
different. And he was a hard person. So, okay, what am I experiencing? Am I experiencing Dad? Oh, no, this is a stage and important.
Beautiful.
So
yes.
yes, so lots of resources. It's good to know what they are. Honestly, you'll have a crash course when it comes. I mean, as prepared as you can be, you're never really prepared. But to at least have some cards somewhere where when it happens, you can pull the card out and go, I need to make a phone call. And
for our current caregivers to know that help
Yes.
is out there, reach for it.
Yes.
Did you write down your father's stories?
I did, and there's one that I still need to work on. He, as a child, he came from, his parents were divorced, and this was in a time period when that was just didn't happen. And his father, he just kind of reconnected with his father when he was about 10 years old, and for maybe a 2-year period, they would, and I had never heard this story until he was, in the hospital. Apparently they would go up to Michigan to an apple orchard that a cousin owned, and he had talked about this one story where he went with, both parents went up with him to help. This was just after World War II. The vets, the armed forces, all the men were still away, and there was no one to pick apples. And so they went up to help the cousins pick these apples, and he talked about it. And I had never heard the story before, but what was strange is I had found some old movie reel in the basement that I had played years earlier, and it was a picture of my grandfather, my grandmother, and my dad picking apples. That was the story. That was the story. And so now I need to figure out how to put this on a disc, and I am going to send it to my siblings. But it just blew my mind. I never knew he had gone up there. Yeah. And it's the conversation started out, every kid needs a farm to go to. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You grew up on the west side of Chicago. What farm did you go to? And I had been to this farm before it was sold years later. A cousin had bought it. So I knew the farm, but I had no idea he had gone up there to pick apples like he did. So those are the stories that you can never beat that.
So as luck would have it, I do have a little storytelling program that I'm going to give you as a gift so that you can write those stories down.
Wonderful.
How about any last words for our caregivers as they see their parent through the dying phase, and for those like you too who are still currently caring for a loved one?
Well, going through the phase, just make sure you educate yourself Medical care is very tricky. You need to be on top of the doctors. You need to, what kind of medicine are they taking? Get to know your parents, get to have a conversation with them, and try, and it's very hard to be there during their medical visits because they're not clear-minded, and what you get from them may not be what actually took place with the doctor.
Yes.
And I think for everybody, before you become a caregiver, have the conversation with your parents and have as much in order as you can, so that when it does happen, you have some idea of what they want, and so there's not arguments among the family of what they want. It's clear. They wrote down what they want. Let's give them their wishes, and it makes it much easier to cut through the drama, because there will be drama. But if you're a caregiver, take care of yourself and take a moment to, socialize a little bit and get out, get a breath. That's very, very important.
Beautiful. Wise words indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glen. Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you need any help with insurance, long-term care, that's what Glen does. We will put up his information for you. If you need any help with legal documents, living will, trusts, you're always got me, your trusty resource at Caroline Walsh Law. And if you care to write down your loved one's stories, I'd love to show you how at sharemylegacy.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Where the Road Rises.